Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining my session, where the subject will be Microsoft Teams Education. Think globally, not for yourself, where I will share lived experience seen in many schools when it comes to change management and IT governance. And this was obviously enforced by the pandemic situation. Before starting, a little bit some slide for this great event. Thanks, René, for the invitation for the Southeast Asia 2021 with great sponsor. And I think you have seen this slide if you attended a session before. There is some quiz if you want to win prizes. So basically, there is a QR code, so you can scan this QR code. So, a little bit about myself before starting. My name is Laurent Carlier. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant based in France, and I work daily with schools and companies to ensure perfect adoption of Microsoft's 365 platforms. And when I said perfect adoption, it means a perfect match between change management plan and IT governance. And these are the two subjects I would like to discuss with you today. I have various certification. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm also certified in change management with ProSci. I have also the Teams Administrator certification, and I'm also MIE Master Trainer. If you want to reach me, you can do it by LinkedIn, Twitter, or by mail. So the agenda I propose you today will be in six parts. The first part will talk about change management and its consequences. The second part, we will see 4 personas on Microsoft 365 platforms, and those 4 personas, what do they have in mind when it comes to change with Microsoft 365 platforms. Then I will give you a simple checklist for change management. Then we will talk a little bit about IT governance key decision, and I will also give you a simple checklist for IT governance. And at the end, we will have a Q&A. So if you have any comments, if you have any remarks, if you have any question, please use the chat, and I will take all of this at the end of the session. So let's start with an observation. That is true for both schools and companies that has led rapid change with good and bad consequences with the pandemic. Who led the digital transformation of your schools? And most of the times, and I've seen this in Europe, I've seen this in France, most of the times the answer was the COVID. I don't know about you. If it is the same answer for you, please say yes, this is the same answer for me in the chat. But for most of the schools, they had no plan for a real digital transformation. So yeah, the COVID-19 came and they had to change very rapidly. And this change came with some consequences. Then I will explain it later. So an interesting question with a massive solution, Microsoft Teams Education. These numbers are huge, and I guess for also in your countries, most of the schools adopted Microsoft Teams Education. As you can see, this is really huge. 270 more than 270 schools use Teams for education right now for remote and hybrid learning, and this is the same thing for higher ed. So the question is, okay, Microsoft Teams Education is in schools, so how do we ensure perfect adoption? That's why I would like to start with to present you some various results as a consequence. Sometimes schools adopted Microsoft 365 perfectly with a perfect change management, but most of the times it was more complex in a more complex situation. So let me give you some consequences. I have seen quite a lot with my education clients. The first consequences that could be bad is a low or slow adoption rate. That means end users are not adopting solution as fast as it was planned. The second one is a disparity between individual adoption speed. That means that when no change management is set up, end users have to find themselves the solution. And when you comes with that, some peoples will go very fast and other peoples will go very slow. That's why I'm using the word disparity. And disparity between individual adoption is not a good thing when you want to have everyone on the same level. The third one is not the same usage between admin staff and educator staff. This is also another bad consequences, and I will talk about it later. It's a huge problem when change management is not seen globally. And when I say globally, it's not a matter of education or not. It really has to be, everyone has to be on the same boat. And most of the times when schools deploy Microsoft 365 platforms, the educators are using Microsoft 365 platforms, but the admin staff, that means the school leaders and the secretary, etc., they stay on on-premise solution. And when you have it, some people use on-premise solution and other people use a fully cloud solution. This is not good. There is two different use of tools, so it is not good for a perfect adoption. Then the last thing is some frustration coming from end user due to poor communication with the IT staff or poor understanding on admin center management. That is also a bad consequences when educators don't speak with IT staff, when educators don't speak with school leaders, and when there is no communication, then the frustration is very high. So I don't know about this, if you agree with me, if you have seen this with your clients, if you are working with me as a consultant, or if you are working in the schools, please say, yes, I saw this. This is it is exactly the situation in my school. Or if it is not, if it is good for you, just say, yeah, it's good for me on my schools. So why is that? Yes, this is the main part of the session, and yes, adoption is a process, and yes, adoption is for schools also. Why I'm saying yes for schools also? Because most of the times when I'm starting to talk about change management to school leaders, some school leaders answer me, okay, change management is not for education, change management is for business part, and this is false. This is not true. Adoption is a process, and when you deploy Microsoft 365 platform, you have to think about change management, even if you are schools. So usually, when the most thing I saw in schools when they deploy the platform, they just thought about the two bricks or the two pillars. They set up the platform, they deployed the platform, and they did some training, and that's it. And if you are doing those two bricks, clearly there is another bricks missing, and those bricks are very important, especially if you want to have a perfect 100% adoption. What are those bricks? The first bricks is a security and IT governance key question. This is important, and if you have never thought about this, then you will have some real problems. And when I say security and IT governance key questions, I will talk about this later, but for example, is have you control the group creation? Have you configure who can add private channel when you are using Teams? Do you have a specific key decision depending on personas? Those questions are very important. And if you have never considered security or IT governance key questions, then it can be a real mess. For example, last month I was called by schools, and those schools told me that, okay, I have 200 teams. I don't know what are those teams. I don't know who created those teams, and I have to clean all of this. And that's this situation was very interesting because those schools never thought about the IT governance key question. And that's why 1 year later, after the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people created some teams. Sometimes the teams were double, for example, a physical teacher PLC, and there was another team called community physical teachers. How come? This is the same thing. Why they didn't talk each other? So that's why you have to really consider the security and IT governance key question. The third is the vision. You have to clarify goal, and you have to have your school leaders on board. This is also very important. The vision is why you are doing this, what benefits, who is going to change, what are the risks of not changing. Those questions are very important. If you have no answer right now, it means that you have a problem with your vision. And if you have no answer with your vision, then the end users, that means the teachers, will not clearly understand why this platform, what the benefits of this platform. So you have to really understand that vision is also an important part. The third one is the key decision person, the stakeholders, and the change management teams. You have to set up a pilot teams. This is also very important in schools and also in companies. Basically, it is a third-party communication with school leaders, the IT staff, and the pilot teams. And the pilot teams will be both for the educators' parts and also for the admin staff. Remember, I told you at the beginning of the session that the admin staff has also to change the way to work. They has also to adopt fully the cloud solution. So you have to set up a pilot team for admin staff also. The other bricks is communication. This is also very important. Why you are doing this, for who, and this is the communication part is linked to the vision. When you set up a clear vision, when you set up a clarifying goals, then you have to communicate this. And when you have no communication or when you have a single communication at the beginning of the year, it will not ensure the perfect understanding of the platform. So communication is constant, and communication will be why you are doing this, what are Teams, what is the main use of Teams, what is the main use of OneDrive, what is the main use of SharePoint, etc., etc. Is there any trainings? You have to communicate on trainings. If there is some, I don't know, for example, a perfect example of using Teams in class, then you have to communicate also this. And that's why communication part is very important. The other breaks are constantly measuring and monitoring. You have to gather feedback from students, feedback from educators, feedback from admin staff. And when you see some problems, then you have to find a rapid answer to these problems. So that's why you have to constantly measuring and monitoring. And if there is a huge problem, then you have to think about the resistance management. This is also a big part in change management process. Sometimes you have educators who are very they have a very low level of digital, and this person you have to pay very attention to this person. If you are not, this person can be a really a bad resistant person, and you have to manage it. And for resistant management, there is a lot of process to manage it, and you have to really consider it. So adoption is a process, yes, for schools also. So you have to consider all these breaks, and if some breaks is missing, you might have a problem. So let's jump on the persona, and I will start with school leaders. When Microsoft 365 platform came to our schools, and there is different view of person, and basically in schools we have four personas. We have the school leaders, we have the IT staff, we have the educators, and we have also the students. And what I've seen from last year and this year is a different observation, different remarks coming from these personas. Some remarks are very good and other remarks are very bad, and that's why I want to show you some example of misconception with Microsoft 365 platform. And the first one will be for school leaders. It can be perfect. You can have a perfect school leaders, but sometimes schools just do not and really understand what is Microsoft 365 platform and why change management is very important. And the first one is, we have never had a digital strategy, but we will do with internal resource. So we have no money for that. Okay, if you have that kind of answer, then this person will have a serious problem. If you have never had a digital strategy, it is not possible to do it with your internal resource. You have to call specific people. You have to call specialized people to do this. If you count on your internal resource, then you will have a very slow plan or no plan, or that it will be very bad. So this is the first misconception. And if you have no money for that, then you have to decide, okay, so what do you want? Do you want all your end users to adopt perfectly Microsoft 365? And if the answer is yes, so you have to invest. This is natural. So if you have no money, so forget about Microsoft 365 platform. Go back to your old solution. The second one is, okay, we have a Microsoft 365 platform. Okay, let's leave all important decision to IT. This is also a good misconception. The IT person will deal only with technical problems. An IT person is not specialized to answer to educators. An IT person is not specialized to consider the adoption process. So maybe you know this, but a Microsoft 365 project is not a technology project. It is a human project. So if you think about let's leave all important decision to IT, it will be a very false start. The third one, okay, this is for the pedagogy, is not for us, the admin staff. Let's skip walking workflow, the traditional on-premise. This is what I explained just before, and I've saw it was last month. I've saw this in a schools where school leaders and secretary remain on-premise, and they share the only communication was email, and they share files with attached files on emails, and these files was stored on the hard disk on the computers. This is not possible. Clearly, it's not possible. You have to change your workflow. Everyone has to be on the same board. So this is also a misconception that you have to fight. And the fourth one is, okay, let's organize 2 training sessions, and that will do for the teachers and personnel, and the rest will be on YouTube. No, sorry for this, but if you set up only 2 training sessions, it will clearly not be enough. The training session has to be constant, and if you have an idea about, oh yeah, let's put teachers on YouTube. YouTube is not your ally. YouTube is your enemy on this. YouTube is good if you want to train for yourself. But as I said before, the change management plan for a school is not an individual process. This is a whole organization process, and YouTube will clearly not help your organization to change. So YouTube, no, forget about it. Let's go about the IT stuff. What about the IT stuff? It can be perfect also, but it can be worst. Let's go in a worst case scenario. The misconception. Maybe you have heard this from your IT staff. Once again, if it is the case for your schools or with your customer, please say something in the chat. And the first one I have seen is this. I was comfortable with my on-premise world, and I'm afraid of the cloud world. I need help. This is important. If your IT staff is not comfortable with the cloud world, you have to help him. It's not natural for most of the IT staff coming from the traditional world. The on-premise world is not natural to go to the cloud world. So you have to train your IT staff how to manage the cloud admin centers. And you know that in Microsoft 365 platform, there are many admin centers. So you have to train them. The second word is I don't understand education licensing. So let's stay on a free offer, the A1. This is also very bad. This is also a really bad misconception. The education licensing is good in Microsoft, and you can start with the limit or the minimal pay licensing, which is called the open value subscription, the Office 365 Pro Plus. Maybe you know this, but this is important to not stay on a free offer, because if you stay on a free offer, and then you will have only the online version of tools, and the online version of tools are do not have the same functionality that the desktop version. And if you stay on the online version, then maybe your end users, for example, the students or the educators, will be very frustrated by not being able to do this on the online version. They will say, okay, I need the desktop version. So no, just not stay on the A1, just took the minimal pay licensing that is called the Office 365 Pro Plus. The third one is, okay, I don't understand the cloud admin centers for every personnel, so let's do it in the most restrictive way. This is not good. I know a lot of IT staff who said, okay, I'm not comfortable with that, so I will disable everything. No, just do not do this, because if you go in a most restrictive way, then your end users will be not okay with that, and that will have a bad consequences, a direct bad consequences on the adoption. So do not go on the most restrictive way. And on the opposite, I don't understand cloud admin center for every persona. Let's bury my head in the sand and hope it will be fine. No, no, just do not do this. Because if you are having this mindset, then you will see that some students will understand how to change some parts or how to create teams or groups or hidden groups or hidden teams. So just do not do this. I don't know, one more time, if it's the case for your schools or your customers, please say it in a chat. Let's go now with the student view. This is also very important, and it's most forgotten, the student view, and I will give you a clearly example. Let's say that this student is on class 3A, and on class 3A, she has 3 teachers. And for those 3 teachers, there was no change management plan, no reflection about how to set up class teams, how to distribute resources. And then it comes very difficult for these students. Why I'm saying this? Let's start with the teacher A. Maybe the teacher A will say, okay, I will distribute the resource for these students with an attached file and email. And yes, I will use my Moodle. Okay, and yes, I need a communication tool. So I will use Discord. And oh yes, I need a storage. I need a cloud storage tool. Then I will use my personal Dropbox. I will use my personal Google Drive. So as you can see, it's not possible. Let's say about the teacher B. The teacher B was lightly trained on Microsoft solution, and he said, "Okay, I will use Teams with these students." And yeah, I don't really understand the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint, and yeah. Maybe I will create a folder on OneDrive, and this folder, I will share this folder on OneDrive with my students. No, this is not the solution. And okay, I have a better understanding on OneDrive and SharePoint. And yeah, I will use SharePoint to store all my pedagogical resources, and I will distribute the plan or the resource to my students with SharePoint. This is not clearly a good solution. And the teachers C, which is for me the best solution, has fully understood how you have to work with your students, and he use Teams, and he use these tools. That is very important, is the OneNote, the education version of OneNote, and the class notebook. And basically, if you are a teacher working with students in a Teams class, then you have to consider only these two tools, Teams and OneNote. Do not consider OneDrive to share with your students. It's not the proper way. Do not consider a SharePoint site. This is a really complicated way to store materials or resource for your class. Just put it on OneNote. This is the dedicated tool for this. So if I summarize it all, can you imagine with these students, with 3 teachers? So these students will have to check on Outlook, we'll have to go on Moodle, we have to go on Discord, we have to go on the Google Drive link, we have to go on OneDrive, we have to go on SharePoint, we have to go on OneNote, we have to go on Teams. So not possible. That's why this is also the another important part. You have to think, if you are a teacher, don't think about your comfort zone. Think about the student comfort zone. This is the most major part. If you are not, then your students will get lost. What about the teacher mind on this? And basically, you have different parts for this. And the first part is when a teacher comes with Microsoft 365 platform, the first question will be, why is it important? Why we are doing this? Is it going to stay even after the pandemic is over? And what are the benefits for all of us? What are the risks of not changing? This is natural. Those questions are very natural. So you have to really find answer of this. And if I see all of these questions, it will be the awareness. What is the awareness? This is a process in change management, and the awareness is the hour of change. What are the other questions that can have the teachers? Do I need to use it fully right now? What's in it for me? What are the benefits for me? Do I have a tool or service that does the same thing? This is also very important in Microsoft 365 platform into schools. You have to decide what are the tools you will keep, and what are the other tools you will not keep. For example, I saw many educators who are using WhatsApp. Clearly, if you are using Teams in your schools, forget about WhatsApp. This is another tool. It's not the proper tool to communicate with colleagues. Just use Teams for this. What changed for the global communication, for the collaboration, for the teaching plan? Do I fully understand what tools, what service, for what? That's what I said just before about the OneDrive or SharePoint. If teachers do not have a clearly understand about how to store my material for class, how to distribute my materials for class. And this is a real question. What are the difference between OneDrive, between SharePoint, between OneNote? If teachers do not have a clearly understanding of this, then you might have some problems. And this is the D for desire, a desire to change. If you have answer for this, then teachers will be able to change. The other question is, how can I change? What new skills? When can I do it? What deadlines? Who will help me on a daily basis? How? These questions are very natural, and this is the key, the knowledge. If you have answer to this, then the teacher will be able to understand how to make the change. The other question is my boss using it? Is my school leaders using it? And is it fully involved? That is also very important. Do my colleagues use it? Which functional, which technical support channels can I have it? This is for the A, the ability. So if you have answer for this, then the teachers will have ability to change. And at last, who can inspire me to go further? Who and where can I share new workflow? This is also a very natural question, and if you have answer for this, and then you will have a perfect way to go to reinforcement. Reinforcement is to make the change permanent. Maybe some of you are do understand what I mean with that. The ATCAR, this is a change management process, and this kind of questions, maybe you had it if you have worked with teachers, and if you are teachers, maybe you have that kind of questions, and you have to, the school leaders and change management team and the IT staff do have to understand that this is natural question. So change management, as you can see, is not just training. If you do just training, then it will not be enough. So clearly, the awareness, remember, as I said, the first step, the awareness is I understand why and how I do it. I will not go into details for this because it will take some time. But if you want to have more details, you can contact me after the session. But to work on the awareness with your end users, the admin staff or teachers, if you do not have an awareness, then they will create some confusion in how to work with awareness. Basically, you work with 3 action plan, which are the sponsor run mode, the communication plan, and the coaching plan. What about the desire? I have decided to. If you have not if you have no answer with that, then it will create some resistance for your end user. How do I work with the desire with my end user? Basically, you use another action plan, which are the same for the first 2, the sponsor roadmap, the coaching plan, and the resistance management plan. What about the knowledge? I know how to. If you do not work with knowledge, then it will create some ignorance. And what are the action plan? Is a training plan, is a coaching plan. What about the ability? I'm able to. If you do not work with the ability process, then it will create some frustration. What are the action plan? This is the same, the training plan and the coaching plan. That's why I said before, it is constant, it is permanently. And the last, the reinforcements, I will continue to. If you do not work with the reinforcements, then it will cause some immobility. And what are the action plan for the reinforcements? It will be the sponsor roadmap, the communication plan, the coaching plan, and the resistance management plan. So as you can see, change management is a real process, and it is more than just set up the platform and training. So let's go for a simple checklist. This is not the perfect checklist. This is the major question that you have to have in your mind. The first one is, have you identified results and outcomes? This is the goals. Have you allocated sufficient and dedicated resources for a change management team, a pilot team? Have you established the right key decision person that will be most of the time in schools, the educators, maybe the technologists, decision makers, and the school leaders? Have you identified all the different audience you need to communicate? That's also very important. That is part of communication. Have you proactively identified the resistance, and have you worked with the knowledge, the training and tools to help the change management teams? And have you implemented the mechanism to gather feedbacks and track adoption? This is also another part that is important. So this checklist is simple, but it shows you the major parts to consider when it comes to change management. Once again, if you agree with me, say yes, I fully agree. Or if you are not agree with me, say no, I'm not agree, and just say why in a chat, and I will see this at the end of the session. What about the IT governance? If you have work with schools, or if you are an IT staff, maybe you have seen this when you open a Microsoft 365 platform, and when you have different things, and the first thing is I have to set up maybe the OneDrive external sharing, the SharePoint external sharing. I have to set up the multi-factor authentication. I have to decide what is the process at the end of the years. When I say end of the year process, is that when a student leaves schools, what is the process? How the students will keep the materials she created or he created. This is very important, the end of years. What about the labels? What about the retention policies? This is the same thing with the end of the years. How many years will you keep the data for the left students? The expiration policies, which comes with them, the groups or Microsoft Teams. How long with these teams will stay? The conditional access, the group provisioning, the group naming policy. I talk about it just at the beginning of the session. The naming policy is also very important. You have to set up a perfect naming policy. If it is about the Teams class, you do not have to worry about it, because you have a perfect tool for this, which is called the School Data Sync, which is a free tool coming from Microsoft, which help you to set up perfect Teams classes. But outside the Teams classes, when it comes to the PLC teams, when it comes to the staff teams, you have to have a perfect naming policy. What about the private channels? What about the meeting policies? What about the live event policies? What about the messaging policies? What about the application inside Teams? What about the templates? If you are using templates for your teams, what about the guest access? What about the external access? What about the archive? What about the access review, especially if you enable the guest access, which is my recommendation? You have to have a clear understanding that you can set up some access review for the guest people who can have access to your teams or your groups. What about the dynamic membership. And as you can see, there's a lot of question about this. It is clearly not simple, and that's why you have to think about it. And the IT staff is not alone in this process. The IT staff has to speak with the school leaders, and the IT staff has to speak with the pilot teams, with the change management teams for some question. As you can see, the group provisioning, the private channel, who can create private channel, the retention, the expiration, the naming policies, all of this is really a whole organization key decision. So those parts are very important. So are you okay with that? If you are not okay with that, then you might have a problem right now, or you might have a problem later in a year or later in a month. So if I share with you a simple checklist with IT governance is have you control the teams, the group creation? Have you decided a specific naming policy for class teams, for PLC teams or staff teams? Have you seen the supervised chat features to not blindly block the chat for students? I saw this many times in schools. The chat for students is the one-on-one chat in Teams, and most of the times IT will see a dangerous thing about the one-on-one chat in Teams, and they will decide, okay, I will disable it for students. But if you do it, it might be a real problem, especially if you are in remote teaching or remote learning or hybrid teaching or hybrid learning. If you disable it, then teachers will not be able to contact personally a student. You have to really understand this. So if you want to have a control on the one-on-one chat for students, there is a good features in Admin Center that is called the supervised chat features, and the supervised chat features will be able you will have, as an IT staff, you will have the possibilities to set up some rules. For example, in one-on-one chat, if teachers or if students want to have a one-on-one chat with a person, then it will be necessarily with another person, another adult person. Two students will not be able to have a one-on-one chat, but you will be able to set up a one-on-one chat between students and, for example, teachers, etc., etc. So check the supervised chat features. This is very important to know. Do you have set up some specific policy in Teams Admin Center depending on persona? The policy, we saw this just before, the meeting policy, the messaging policy, etc., etc. And when I'm talking about persona, and as I said before, typically is the educator's persona, the school leader's persona, the admin staff persona, and the student persona. And you have 4 persona, and for those 4 personas, you have to decide what he or she will be able to do on Teams, on groups, what I have to enable, what I have to disable. And it really depends on persona. That's why you have to have clearly a good discussion with the school leaders, the IT staff, and the pilot team. Have you considered not disabling blindly the guest features? I saw also this many times for in schools. An IT person will say, okay, I do not want guest users, so I will disable the guest access users on my tenant. This is also not good, because if you are doing this, especially if you are using the OneNote features, in OneNote you can create parents and guardians link, which is read-only link. that will permit parents and guardians to see, for example, what the students study in OneNote for the contents of library. Then you can set up read-only links, and for the individual portfolio of students, you can also set up an individual link. And when an IT staff disable the guest features, this link will not be possible. That is also a problem. So don't disable it blindly. Just really think about it. Do you set up at least 2 owners in a team? That is very important. It is also true for the class teams. It will be you have to have at least 2 owners in a team. And have you understood the architecture of a teams? This is also a major point, and I've seen this at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm still seeing this right now in some schools when they have no clear understanding of an architecture of a teams architecture. That means the channel. Then you will see some very strange example, as maybe a team with 32 channels. 32 channels is huge. It's not possible. Clearly, it's not possible. Don't go. You have to set up a minimum 15 channels, 15 or 10 channels. If you do more, then it will be very difficult for end user to really understand, okay, this channel is for what, and how can I access quickly to the information. And this is the same thing for private channels. And maybe you have seen this, some Teams class with general channels and 25 private channels. What's the purpose of this? If you set up a Teams with a general channel and only private channels, this is not a team. So there's clearly a misconception of this. So if really, you have to focus on the architecture of a Teams, especially when it comes with channels. So that was my quick checklist IT governance. I wanted to show you some quick tips, but I have only 10 minutes left, so I will just go back to the chat to answer the remarks or the question for this. And if you have time, I will show you some quick tips. I don't know if there is some question for this, or no question or remarks. Tanchon, your mic is off. Can you enable it?
Sorry. Sorry. Please post your questions in the chat box there.
Okay. Let me see. Okay.
Actually, what comes across to me is that and in consulting all that, we always fall back into what are the fundamental questions, right? And I do notice that you actually address a lot of these fundamental questions, which is essential when you want to do.
Yeah. Actually, what you present just before, the education framework from Microsoft, is also a great tool. But sometimes in the education framework, they don't go deeply on that, and that's why we have to really focus on change management part, which is not presented in the education framework. But basically, the education framework is a good base for this.
Yes, and then plus. Many people think that they know because everything is in their mind. But when it comes to actual doing, what is very important is actually the framework. And then what you have done, a lot of checklists, and of course your checklist, a lot of do's and don'ts. Because a lot of people feel that all these things is common sense, I know, but when you actually sit down and think through this whole thing, it's a lot more than common sense. Because you want to be able to execute. And to be able to execute, you don't have the framework, you don't have the concept, you don't have the fundamentals, and you don't have a checklist. Honestly, you cannot execute.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is
Exactly.
what I realized also.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm usually saying that the change management is not a sum of individual change. This is not this. This is a whole organization change. That's why all the parts have to communicate, have to discuss about the key decision.
Yes, yes. And then change management is actually an ongoing process. There's no end point.
Yeah,
Okay. There's
exactly,
no end
exactly,
point. So people
exactly.
have to keep in mind. So your change management, there always need to be change management over change management.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yes.
And that's why the change management has to be set up with the IT governance. This is not two silos.
Yes.
It's not silos. This is a
Mm.
role thing. That's why
Yes.
the discussion is important.
Yes. You want to share some tips? If there's no questions
Yeah,
coming, you have some tips just now. No?
yeah. If there is no question, just quickly in 5 minutes, I want to share you some quick tips for this. The first tips is for the class teams. Usually, when you have a class teams, when it comes with communication, you can have the mentioning. Mention plus mention the whole class. But this is not a good thing to mention all the times the whole class. That's why my first tip will be to create, as you can see on my screen here, this is tag. And you have to create some tag, for example, students. This is in French, but it means students. And if you see this, this is a tag regrouping all my students. And when I do this, this is very good, because if I want to mention only the students, I can do it like the art mark and the name of my tag, which is students. And then after I will send the information. And when I'm doing this, only the students will be notified for this. That's why you have to think about this. The second tips, this is an old tip, but most of the times it is unknown from educators, is that if you are an educator or if you are an owner of a class teams, in manage features, you can here disable the chat for students. Let's say, for example, you want your students to be focused on a certain things, and you do not want your students to be able to use the chat inside the class teams. And then if you click on this, and the chat teams will be disabled for all of the students. Or if you want to disable a specific students, you can do it by checking only the name. So this is good to work on that way. That was the second tip. And the third tip, that will be maybe my final tip for this. You can, this is also recent feature, as you can add a calendar, a channel calendar. And what is good for this is that if you want to have your calendar for your class teams, when you can set up your online classes and different events, then you can set up directly in your class teams. For example, this is my class teams at the French class teams, and you click on the plus, and the plus you have the channel calendar. And if I click on add a channel calendar, and I will say calendar class, for example, and click on the add. When I'm doing this, as you can see on my screen, it comes with a specific tab, and this tab will open on my calendar. And when I'm doing, for example, if I set up an event on this calendar, then it will be synchronized with my general calendar. So it's not two calendars, it is the same calendars. So that is good to know as a tip. That was quickly my tips.
Yeah, I
Are
think
we
if
okay?
you
Wait, yeah. Go
yeah
ahead.
if you look at the whole thing now, actually Teams now there is so feature rich, you know. There are so many things that's coming up. So
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
so it's very natural that you will forget. You know,
Yeah.
you'll forget, and then so the best way to do is that you have to go and use it, and
Yeah.
you also cannot expect yourself to be using all of it, but you will have to
Exactly.
use what are some of those things. But the key thing that I pick up from your presentation is that which is aligned with the message going forward is about engagement and experience. Okay, so
Exactly.
I think you put a fair bit of emphasis on don't mindlessly go and shut down the chat, close up the link and all that, because
Yeah.
actually in the virtual world, right, the most difficult thing to do for an educator is to get the attention.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to try different means and ways to how to get people engaged, and only with the engagement then we get attention. Okay, so I
Exactly.
think you give very good tips and very good checklists on those things, and really they are very important, because the biggest challenge yesterday was also brought out by one of the attendees. I think
Exactly.
the biggest thing is how I don't know what my students are seeing. Everybody is staring at the screen, but I don't know what they are seeing. You know, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think very good tips from you. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any last questions? Laurent, any last words to say before we close up?
Yeah, it was very great for me to present on this conference. I hope you get some good inspiration from my presentation about change management and IT governance. And yeah, you have my my contact, and I think René will share afterwards the presentation. So if you have any question for me, please contact me.